The champagne tasted like betrayal, but maybe that was just my mood. Standing on the rooftop of Hartwell and Associates, watching Chicago's skyline glitter in the distance, I couldn't shake the feeling that this retirement party was more funeral than celebration. My funeral. "Julian, you look absolutely thriving." The voice belonged to Megan Caldwell, one of my wife's closest friends. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Retirement at 42, how wonderfully unexpected." I raised my glass to her. Nothing like being forced out to make a man appreciate his golden years. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She laughed, but her eyes were already scanning the crowd for more interesting prey. That's when I noticed them. Adriana and her little circle huddled near the bar like conspirators. My wife looked stunning as always, her black dress hugging curves that had stopped being mine months ago. Beside her, Lila Harrison whispered something that made them all giggle. "The only thing missing from Julian's bedroom repertoire," Lila's voice carried just far enough, "is anything resembling passion. Poor Adriana's been practically celibate for years." The words hit like a slap, but I kept my expression neutral. 20 years of corporate law had taught me to hide my reactions. I moved closer, pretending to examine the catering spread. "Is Nick coming tonight?" Megan asked, and I saw Adriana's cheeks flush. "He said he might stop by," Adriana replied, her voice carefully casual. "You know how busy he is with the fund." Nick Barrett. Hedge fund golden boy, all flash and no substance. I'd met him at a few social events, watched him work rooms like a predator sizing up prey. The way Adriana's eyes lit up when she mentioned his name told me everything I needed to know. "Ladies and gentlemen," my former partner David Hartwell tapped his glass. "If I could have your attention, we're here tonight to celebrate Julian Monroe's distinguished career and wish him well in his next chapter." The crowd gathered, faces ranging from genuinely sympathetic to barely concealed glee. In the corporate world, one man's downfall was everyone else's opportunity. I'd been the fall guy for a partner's embezzlement scheme, quietly pushed out to protect the firm's reputation. Everyone knew it, but nobody talked about it. "Julian has been more than a colleague," David continued. "He's been a friend, a mentor, and an invaluable member of our team. We'll miss his sharp wit, his dedication, and his uncanny ability to find solutions where others see only problems." I stepped forward, accepting the microphone. "Thank you, David. And thank you all for coming tonight. It's not every day a man gets to celebrate being thrown under the bus with such style." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. I caught sight of my kids, Ross, 22 and fresh out of college, and Tara, 19 and home from Northwestern. They stood with Adriana, looking embarrassed by my presence. "I've learned a lot over the years," I continued, "about loyalty, about friendship, about the true nature of the people closest to us. Tonight feels like the perfect time to embrace new beginnings." That's when Adriana stepped forward. The crowd parted for her like she was royalty, which in her mind, she probably was. She held an envelope in her manicured hands. "Julian," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent rooftop, "since we're talking about new beginnings, I have something for you." She handed me the envelope. I could feel every eye on us as I opened it. Divorce papers, neatly prepared, professionally bound, and served in front of everyone who mattered in our social circle. The crowd held its collective breath. Someone's phone was already recording. This would be all over social media within hours. "Well," I said, scanning the documents, "this is certainly unexpected. You want me to use your pen, or would you prefer a ceremonial dagger?" More nervous laughter, but Adriana wasn't smiling anymore. She'd expected tears, maybe anger, certainly not jokes. I think it's time we both moved on with our lives, she said, her voice stronger now. We've grown apart, and I believe we'll both be happier this way. I looked at the papers again, then at the crowd, then at my wife of 20 years. You know what, Adriana? You're absolutely right. I pulled out my pen and signed every page with a flourish. The crowd murmured, phones clicked, and I could practically hear the gossip mill spinning to life. There, I said, handing the papers back to her. Consider me officially unmade. I leaned in close, my voice low enough that only she could hear. You have no idea what you just did. She laughed, but I caught the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. I think I know exactly what I did, Julian. I set us both free. I straightened my tie and smiled at the crowd. Well, folks, looks like the party's over. Thank you all for witnessing this lovely moment. I'm sure we'll all remember it for a very long time. I walked toward the elevator, leaving behind the whispers and stares. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of Adriana, surrounded by her friends, basking in the attention. She thought she'd won. She thought I was finished. How adorable. The elevator descended, carrying me away from my old life and toward something new, something they couldn't possibly see coming, because while they'd been busy destroying Julian Monroe, the corporate lawyer, they'd forgotten one crucial detail. I was also Julian Monroe, the man who never forgot a slight, never forgave a betrayal, and never ever went down without a fight. The lobby was empty, except for security. I nodded to the guard and stepped out into the Chicago night. Above me, the party continued, my former life celebrating my demise. But parties end, hangovers begin, and reality has a way of sobering people up fast. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Tom Allerton, private investigator, old law school buddy, and the kind of man who understood that sometimes the system needed a little help delivering justice. Tom, I said when he answered. It's Julian. I need a favor, a big one. 3 days after the party, I was living in a studio apartment that smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. The Marriott had been fine for the first night, but I needed something more permanent, something that matched my new status as a social pariah. The gossip had spread faster than a Chicago fire. Our divorce party was trending on Twitter, complete with grainy videos of Adriana serving me papers. The comments ranged from sympathetic to savage, but the overall narrative was clear. Julian Monroe, disgraced lawyer, gets his final comeuppance from his fed-up wife. You look like hell, Tom Allerton said, settling into the apartment's only decent chair. He hadn't changed much since law school, still lean, still sharp, still possessed of the kind of cynical humor that made him excellent at his job. I feel worse than I look, which is saying something. I handed him a beer from my nearly empty refrigerator. Thanks for coming. Wouldn't miss it. That video of your wife serving you papers has been shared more times than cat memes. You're famous, buddy. Infamous, I corrected. There's a difference. Tom studied me over his beer. So what's the play here? You want me to dig up dirt on the new boyfriend? Prove adultery for the divorce proceedings? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Tom, the divorce is the least of my problems. She can have half of nothing. What I want is something else entirely. I'd spent the last 3 days thinking, planning, and nursing a rage that burned cold and steady. Adriana thought she'd destroyed me publicly, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated how much I'd learned about revenge during 20 years of corporate warfare. I want you to investigate Nick Barrett. Everything. His business, his finances, his personal life. I want to know what he eats for breakfast and what he dreams about at night. The hedge fund guy? What's your angle? He's been sleeping with my wife for months, maybe longer, but that's just the beginning. I pulled out a manila folder I'd been building. I've been doing some preliminary research. Nick's fund has been making some interesting moves lately. Risky investments, unusual partnerships. I think he's cutting corners. Tom flipped through the documents. This is good work. You sure you don't want to get into the PI business? I'm thinking about it. But first, I want to finish what Adriana started. She wanted to destroy me publicly? Fine. Let's see how she likes it when the spotlight shifts. My phone buzzed. A text from Ross. Dad, can we talk? Mom's been acting weird since the party. I showed Tom the message. My kids have been avoiding me since the divorce announcement. Adriana's been spinning the narrative, making me out to be the villain in our marriage. And now the cracks are showing? Kids aren't stupid. They're starting to ask questions. I typed back, of course. Want to grab coffee? The reply came quickly. How about dinner? Tara wants to come too. Tom grinned. Sounds like the tide's turning. Maybe. But I'm not counting on family loyalty to win this war. I need ammunition. And I need it soon. Adriana's riding high right now, but success makes people careless. They start believing their own press. What about your old firm? Any chance of getting back in there? I shook my head. David made it clear that bridges burned. But that might work in our favor. I know where all the bodies are buried at Hartwell and Associates. If I need leverage, I've got it. Tom finished his beer and stood. All right, I'm in. Give me a week to dig into Barrett. But Julian, whatever you're planning, make sure you're ready for the consequences. Revenge is a messy business. After he left, I sat in my empty apartment and stared at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Adriana was probably celebrating her liberation, maybe even planning her next move with Nick. They thought they'd won, thought they'd successfully erased Julian Monroe from their story. They were about to learn that some stories don't end when you want them to. My phone rang. Detective Lena Caro, an old friend from my prosecutor days, before I'd sold my soul to corporate law. Julian, I heard about the divorce. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's the best thing that's happened to me in years. That's not what I called about. I've been hearing rumors about Nick Barrett. Nothing official, but word is, he's been making some questionable connections. Thought you should know. What kind of connections? The kind that make cops nervous. Money laundering, maybe some offshore stuff. Nothing proven, but where there's smoke. There's usually a very expensive fire. Thanks, Lena. I owe you one. You owe me several, but who's counting? After she hung up, I opened my laptop and started a new document. The Unmaking of Adriana Voss Monroe. Because if she wanted to play games with my life, she was going to learn that I'd been playing them longer and better than she ever imagined. The war had begun, and I intended to win it. 2 weeks into my new life, I discovered that revenge was a lot like practicing law. It required patience, attention to detail, and an understanding of human weakness. Fortunately, I'd had 20 years to study Adriana's weaknesses. Her biggest vulnerability was also her greatest strength, her need to be the center of attention. She'd built her entire identity around being admired, envied, and talked about. The divorce had given her exactly what she craved. She was the star of her own drama, the wronged wife who'd finally found the courage to leave her boring husband. But stars burn out, and I was about to turn off the oxygen. The Barrett investigation is paying dividends, Tom said, spreading photos across my kitchen table. Your boy Nick is not as clean as his reputation suggests. The pictures told a story. Nick entering a downtown hotel with a woman who wasn't Adriana. Nick at a restaurant with known associates of a money laundering operation. Nick's Porsche parked outside a massage parlor that offered more than therapeutic services. How recent are these? Last week. He's been busy since your divorce party. Seems like your wife's newfound freedom has given him some ideas about his own. I studied the photos, feeling that familiar cold satisfaction. What about his business? Barrett Capital Management is leveraged to the hilt. He's been using client money for increasingly risky investments. Not illegal yet, but walking the line. One bad quarter and his whole operation could collapse. And his personal life? Tom grinned. Nick's been married for 8 years to a woman named Patricia. She comes from old Chicago money. Her family's been funding his lifestyle and his business. She has no idea about Adriana or any of the others. Others? Your wife isn't his first affair. Guy's got a pattern. Targets married women, usually ones going through rough patches, makes them feel special, then moves on when things get complicated. The pieces were falling into place. Nick wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was running a con on her, just like he'd done with others. Adriana thought she'd found her Prince Charming, but she'd actually found a predator. My phone buzzed. A text from Megan Caldwell. Julian, I hope you're doing well. Would love to catch up over coffee. Interesting. Megan had been one of Adriana's most loyal friends, but also one of the biggest gossips in our social circle. If she was reaching out to me, it meant the narrative was shifting. I met her at a Starbucks in Lincoln Park, far from our usual haunts. She looked nervous, constantly checking her phone and glancing around like she was afraid of being seen. Julian, I want you to know that not everyone thinks what Adriana did was right, she said, stirring her latte with unnecessary vigor. Serving you papers at your own party was cruel. But effective, I replied. She got exactly the reaction she wanted. Maybe, but people are starting to talk, and not all of it is flattering to her. What kind of talk? Megan leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. She's been flaunting her relationship with Nick Barrett, taking him to events, introducing him as her close friend. It's tacky, Julian. People notice these things. I'm sure they do. And there are rumors about Nick, about his business, his personal life. Lila heard from someone at the country club that he's been seen with other women, married women. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was celebrating. The gossip mill was doing my work for me. I'm sorry, Julian. I know this must be hard to hear. Actually, Megan, it's exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you for telling me. She looked surprised. You're not upset? Why would I be upset? Adriana made her choice. If she's chosen poorly, that's her problem, not mine. After Megan left, I called Tom. It's time to accelerate the timeline. How quickly can you get those photos to Patricia Barrett? Give me an hour. And Tom? Make sure they're delivered in a way that maximizes impact. Maybe during one of her charity events? You're starting to scare me, Julian. In a good way. That evening, I had dinner with Ross and Tara at a quiet restaurant downtown. They both looked uncomfortable, like they were meeting with a stranger instead of their father. Dad, Tara began, we need to talk about what happened at the party. What about it? Mom said you weren't surprised by the divorce papers. She said you two had talked about it beforehand. I cut into my steak, taking my time. And what do you think? I think Mom's lying, Ross said bluntly. Your face when she handed you those papers, you looked like you'd been punched. But you recovered fast, Tara added. Too fast, like you were expecting something like that to happen. Smart kids. Too smart for their own good sometimes. Your mother and I had been having problems for a while, I said carefully. But no, I wasn't expecting to be served divorce papers at my retirement party. That was purely Adriana's theatrical touch. She's been different since then, Ross continued. Secretive, always on her phone, going out at weird hours, and she keeps talking about this Nick guy like he's some kind of savior. Nick Barrett? Yeah, she acts like he's the answer to all her problems. It's weird, Dad. She's acting like a teenager with a crush. I felt a surge of protective anger toward my children. They were watching their mother make a fool of herself, and they were smart enough to see it for what it was. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this, I said. But your mother is an adult. She's free to make her own choices, even if they're bad ones. What about you? Tara asked. What are you going to do now? I smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it felt genuine. I'm going to rebuild my life, starting with making sure you two know that whatever happens between your mother and me, you're the most important thing in the world to me. They both relaxed visibly. Whatever poison Adriana had been feeding them about me, it wasn't taking hold. As I drove home, my phone rang. Tom. Mission accomplished. Patricia Barrett received the photos during her hospital charity gala, in front of about 200 of Chicago's social elite. And? Let's just say Nick's going to have some explaining to do. But Julian? You might want to lay low for a while. Patricia Barrett is connected, and she's not the type to suffer humiliation quietly. Good, I said. Neither am I. The next morning, I woke up to find that Nick Barrett was trending on social media. Someone had leaked video of Patricia Barrett confronting Nick at the charity gala, and it was brutal. She'd thrown a glass of wine in his face and called him out in front of everyone, naming Adriana specifically as one of his whores. The video had been shared thousands of times, and the comments were savage. Adriana's name was being dragged through the mud alongside Nick's, and her carefully constructed image as the wronged wife was crumbling in real time. I poured myself coffee and watched the drama unfold online. This was just the beginning. Adriana had wanted to destroy me publicly, and she'd succeeded. But she'd forgotten the cardinal rule of warfare: never leave your enemy alive to fight back. And I was very much alive. The Barrett scandal exploded across Chicago's social media landscape like a perfectly timed bomb. Within 48 hours, Nick had been suspended from his country club, dropped by 2 major clients, and was facing a very expensive divorce from Patricia. Adriana, meanwhile, was discovering that being the other woman carried significantly less social cachet than being the wronged wife. I was having the best week I'd had in months. Dad, have you seen the news about Nick Barrett? Tara called me, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. I might have caught something about it, I said, scrolling through the latest batch of social media posts. Someone had created a meme of Nick getting wine thrown in his face with the caption, "When your side piece meets your wife." Mom's been crying all morning. She keeps saying it's not fair that people don't understand their relationship. What do you think? I think Mom's been lying to us about everything. Ross found some texts on her phone. She's been seeing Nick for months, Dad, while you were still married. The anger in Tara's voice was music to my ears, but I kept my tone neutral. I'm sorry you had to find out that way. Are you? Because you don't sound surprised. Smart girl. Too smart. I suspected something was going on, but I didn't have proof. And honestly, by the time I figured it out, our marriage was already over. But she made it sound like you were the problem, like you were the reason she was unhappy. Maybe I was part of the reason, but adults handle their problems by talking, not by having affairs and serving divorce papers at public events. There was silence on the other end, then. Can Ross and I stay with you this weekend? Mom's not handling things well. Of course. I'll pick you up Friday after work. After she hung up, I called Tom. How's our boy Nick doing? Not great. Patricia's lawyers are going all out in the divorce. They're demanding a full audit of his business, claiming he used marital assets to fund his affairs. And get this, 2 more women have come forward claiming Nick seduced them while they were going through divorces. A pattern of predatory behavior. That could be useful. It gets better. Barrett Capital Management is hemorrhaging clients. Word is spreading that Nick's been making increasingly risky investments, and now that his personal life is a mess, people are losing confidence in his professional judgment. What about Adriana? She's toxic by association. Her PR firm is getting nervous about the negative publicity. Apparently, several clients have expressed concern about having their brands associated with the scandal. I felt that familiar cold satisfaction spreading through my chest. Adriana had built her career on managing other people's images, but she'd completely lost control of her own narrative. That afternoon, I got an unexpected visitor. Lila Harrison stood outside my apartment building, looking significantly less polished than usual. Her perfect hair was slightly mussed, her makeup wasn't quite right, and her designer clothes couldn't hide the fact that she was rattled. Julian, we need to talk. I let her into my Spartan apartment, noting how she looked around with barely concealed distaste. This was probably the first time she'd been anywhere that didn't cost at least $3,000 a month in rent. "I want you to know that I never supported what Adriana did at your party," she began, perching on the edge of my couch, like she was afraid it might be contaminated. "But you didn't try to stop her either. Would you have listened if I had?" "Fair point. What do you want, Lila?" "I want you to call off whatever you're doing to Nick Barrett." I laughed. "You think I'm responsible for Nick's problems? The man got caught cheating on his wife with multiple women, including mine. I didn't make him do that." "You know what I mean. The photos, the timing of Patricia finding out, that wasn't coincidence." "Prove it." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her recalculating. The Julian Monroe she thought she knew, boring, predictable, easily dismissed, wouldn't have been capable of orchestrating Nick's downfall. But the man sitting across from her clearly was. "Adriana's my friend," she said finally. "I don't want to see her destroyed." "Then you should have thought about that before you helped her destroy me. You remember that night, don't you? When you made those charming comments about my bedroom skills loud enough for half the party to hear?" Her cheeks flushed. "That was just girl talk. I didn't mean—" "You meant every word. You all did. You thought it was hilarious, watching the boring lawyer get humiliated by his glamorous wife. Well, congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted." "This isn't what we wanted." "No? Then what did you want? For me to just disappear quietly? Let Adriana ride off into the sunset with her hedge fund prince while I faded into obscurity?" Lila stood up, her composure cracking. "I want you to remember that Adriana is the mother of your children. Whatever you do to her affects them too. My children are smart enough to see their mother for what she really is. And unlike Adriana, I'm not going to lie to them about it." After she left, I sat in my apartment and thought about what she'd said. She was right about one thing. Whatever I did to Adriana would affect Ross and Tara. But they were already being affected by her choices, her lies, her complete lack of consideration for anyone but herself. My phone rang. Ross. "Dad, I need to tell you something. Mom's been asking me and Tara to say bad things about you if anyone asks. She wants us to back up her story about you being a terrible husband." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her to go to hell. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm sorry we believed her lies, and I'm sorry we didn't support you at the party. We should have known better. You don't need to apologize for anything. You're not responsible for the choices your mother made. But we are responsible for our own choices, and we choose you." That night, I opened a bottle of wine, a good one, not the cheap stuff I'd been drinking since the divorce, and called Tom. "I need you to dig deeper into Adriana's business, her clients, her contracts, her financial situation. If she's going to play games with my reputation, let's see how she likes it when someone plays games with hers." "Julian, are you sure about this? Going after your ex-wife's career is a big escalation." "She escalated first when she served me papers in front of everyone I knew. I'm just returning the favor." "All right, but be careful. You're walking a fine line between justice and revenge." "No," I said, taking a sip of wine and watching the city lights twinkle below my window. "I crossed that line the night she humiliated me. Now I'm just seeing how far I can go before someone stops me." The answer, as it turned out, was farther than anyone expected. 3 weeks after the Barrett scandal broke, I was starting to understand why they say revenge is a dish best served cold. The slow burn was infinitely more satisfying than any quick strike could have been. Adriana's world was unraveling thread by thread. Nick had been forced to close Barrett Capital Management after a client exodus that left him essentially bankrupt. His divorce from Patricia was proceeding with all the subtlety of a public execution, and the prenup he'd insisted on was proving to be a spectacular miscalculation. It protected Patricia's assets, not his. Adriana, meanwhile, was learning that being associated with a scandal-plagued hedge fund manager wasn't great for a PR career. 2 major clients had dropped her firm, citing reputational concerns, and the rumor mill was working overtime to connect her to Nick's other affairs. But I wasn't done, not even close. "We have a problem," Tom said, settling into what had become his usual chair in my apartment. "Nick's getting desperate, and desperate men do stupid things." "What kind of stupid things?" "The kind that involve hiring muscle. I've been watching his movements, and yesterday he met with Ray Delgado. You know that name?" I did. Ray was the kind of man who solved problems with his fists first and asked questions later. He'd been connected to several assault cases over the years, but nothing had ever stuck. "Nick's planning something?" "Looks like it. My guess is he's figured out that his problems aren't just bad luck. He knows someone's been orchestrating his downfall, and you're the obvious suspect." I considered this. I'd been careful to keep my involvement hidden, but Nick wasn't stupid. Desperate and arrogant, yes, but not stupid. "Let him come," I said. "I've been waiting for him to make a move. Julian, this isn't a game. Ray Delgado has put 3 men in the hospital in the last 2 years. And how many of those men saw him coming?" Tom stared at me. "You want Nick to try something. You're setting a trap." "I'm creating an opportunity. There's a difference." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet me at the Palmer House bar tonight, 9 p.m. Come alone." I showed Tom the message. "Well, that was faster than expected." "You're not seriously thinking of going?" "Of course I am. This is exactly what I've been waiting for." "It's a trap, Julian." "Yes, it is. But not the kind Nick thinks it is." That evening, I arrived at the Palmer House bar 15 minutes early. The place was crowded enough to provide witnesses, but intimate enough for a private conversation. Perfect for what I had in mind. Nick arrived exactly on time, looking significantly less polished than usual. His expensive suit couldn't hide the fact that he was a man under enormous pressure. He scanned the room before approaching my table, his movements sharp and paranoid. "Julian." He sat down without being invited, his eyes never leaving my face. "Nick, you look terrible. Divorce not going well?" "Cut the shit. We both know you're behind what's happening to me." "Am I? That's fascinating. Tell me more about this theory of yours." He leaned forward, his voice low and threatening. "Someone fed my wife those photos. Someone's been spreading rumors about my business, poisoning my clients against me. And the only person with motive is you." "Motive? Nick, I barely know you. Why would I care enough about your life to interfere with it?" "Because I'm sleeping with your wife." The words hung in the air between us. Around us, the bar continued its normal rhythm, but our little corner had become its own universe of tension and barely controlled violence. "Ex-wife," I corrected. "And frankly, you're welcome to her." Adriana always was attracted to shiny objects. Nick's face flushed red. "You think you're clever, don't you? Sitting there with your smug little smile while my life falls apart? Your life is falling apart because you made bad choices. I didn't force you to cheat on your wife, or to make risky investments with client money, or to seduce married women going through difficult times. That's all you, Nick. You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? Let's see. There was Jennifer Walsh going through a messy custody battle when you swept her off her feet, and Susan Chen dealing with her husband's gambling addiction, and now Adriana, fresh from serving her husband divorce papers. You have a type, Nick. Vulnerable women who mistake your attention for genuine care." His hands were shaking now. Whether from rage or fear, I couldn't tell. "You can't prove any of that." "I don't need to prove anything. The women you've hurt are starting to talk to each other. Social media is a wonderful thing for connecting people who share common experiences." "This isn't over, Julian. You think you've won, but you have no idea what you're dealing with." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." He stood up abruptly, knocking over his untouched drink. Stay away from me and stay away from Adriana, or you'll regret it. I'll take that under advisement. After he left, I sat in the bar for another hour, nursing my scotch and thinking. Nick had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He'd threatened me in public, in front of witnesses. And if Tom was right about Ray Delgado, Nick was about to escalate from threats to action, which was exactly what I'd been hoping for. I called Detective Lena Caro from the bar. Lena, I need a favor. I think someone might be planning to hurt me and I want it on record. What kind of someone? The kind with connections to Ray Delgado. There was silence on the other end, then, Julian, what have you gotten yourself into? Nothing I can't handle. But I want to make sure there's a paper trail, just in case. Come to the station tomorrow morning. We'll file a report. The next day, after giving my statement to the police, I called Tom. How's our surveillance on Nick going? He's been busy. Met with Ray again this morning and they seem to be making plans. I think you were right. He's going to try something. Good. Make sure you're recording everything. I want documentation of whatever he's planning. Julian, I have to ask, what's the endgame here? You've already destroyed his business and his marriage. What more do you want? I want him to destroy himself. And I want Adriana to see exactly what kind of man she chose over me. And then what? Then I'll decide if I'm satisfied or if I want to keep playing. That evening I got a call from Tara. Dad, Mom's been acting really strange. She's paranoid, keeps talking about how people are out to get her and Nick. She's scaring us. Are you safe? I think so. But Dad, she's talking about leaving Chicago. She says she and Nick need to start over somewhere else. Running away won't solve their problems. That's what Ross told her. She didn't take it well. I thought about this. If Adriana and Nick were planning to leave town, it would complicate my plans significantly. I needed them here, where I could control the narrative and the consequences. Tara, I want you and Ross to stay with me for a while until things settle down. We were hoping you'd say that. Mom's not herself right now. After she hung up, I stood at my apartment window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Nick was planning his next move, probably something involving Ray Delgado and the kind of violence that would solve nothing but make everything worse. For him. Because while Nick was focused on hurting me, he was missing the bigger picture. Every threat, every escalation, every desperate attempt to regain control was just digging his grave deeper. And Adriana, who'd thought she was trading up from a boring lawyer to an exciting bad boy, was about to learn that exciting men often came with very dangerous baggage. The trap was set. All I had to do now was wait for them to spring it. The call came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your family home. 1 hour. Come alone or your daughter pays the price. I was already reaching for my clothes when the phone rang. Tara, crying. Dad, they took me. I was coming back from study group and these men grabbed me. They say they'll hurt me if you don't come to the house. Tara, listen to me. Are you hurt? No, but Dad, I'm scared. They have guns. The line went silent. I called Tom immediately. Nick's made his play, I said. He's got Tara at the family house. Jesus Christ, Julian. This is kidnapping. We need to call the police. No. If we involve the cops now, Tara could get hurt. I'm going to handle this myself. That's insane. You're not equipped to deal with armed men. Maybe not. But I know that house better than anyone, and I've been preparing for something like this. It was true. Over the past month, I'd been making regular trips to the house that Adriana and I had shared for 15 years. Officially, I was collecting personal belongings. Unofficially, I'd been setting up a few surprises. Tom, I need you to call Detective Caro in exactly 1 hour. Tell her what's happening and have her send units to the house. But not before then. I need time to get Tara out safely. Julian? 1 hour, Tom. Not a minute sooner. The drive to Winnetka took 35 minutes through empty streets. The house sat on 2 acres of perfectly manicured lawn, a monument to suburban success that now felt like a mausoleum. Every window was dark except for the kitchen, where I could see shadows moving. I parked 3 blocks away and approached through the neighbor's yard, using the route I'd taken as a teenager sneaking out of my own house. Some skills never fade. The back door was unlocked. They were expecting me to use the front entrance. I slipped inside and immediately smelled cigarette smoke and fear sweat. Voices carried from the living room. Should have been here by now. Maybe he's not coming. He'll come. Guys like that, they think they're heroes. He won't let anything happen to his little girl. Ray Delgado's voice, rough and confident. I counted at least 3 different speakers, maybe 4. Not great odds, but I'd faced worse in corporate boardrooms. I made my way to the basement, where I'd hidden several items over the past few weeks. A baseball bat from Ross's high school days, a hunting knife I'd bought but never used, and most importantly, the master control for the house's security system, a system I'd had upgraded without Adriana's knowledge. The new system included motion sensors, cameras, and automated locks on every door and window. It also included a few custom modifications that the installer probably shouldn't have agreed to. I activated the system from my phone, watching as the house sealed itself. Every exit locked, every window secured. The men upstairs were now trapped inside with me, and I knew every inch of this house in the dark. I made my way upstairs, using the servants' staircase that most people forgot existed in houses this old. The voices were clearer now. Told you this was a bad idea. Kidnapping's federal, Ray. This isn't some bar fight. Shut up. Barrett's paying us enough to retire on. All we have to do is scare the lawyer and take some pictures for leverage. What if he doesn't scare easy? Then we make it real. I reached the main floor and could see into the living room. Tara was tied to a chair in the center of the room, looking terrified but unharmed. Ray Delgado stood behind her, a gun in his hand. 2 other men flanked the windows, watching for my arrival. Nick wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. He was too smart to be directly involved in a kidnapping. He'd hired Ray to do his dirty work and maintained plausible deniability. I pulled out my phone and activated the next phase of my plan. Every light in the house went out simultaneously, plunging the room into darkness. What the hell? Generator must have failed. Check the breaker box. I can't see shit. Where's the flashlight? I smiled in the darkness. The house had backup power, but I'd disabled it hours ago. What they didn't know was that I had night vision goggles, a paranoid purchase I'd made after the first threats started coming. The world turned green and clear. I could see everything while they stumbled around blind. I made my move. The first man went down when I hit him across the back of the head with the baseball bat. He dropped like a stone, his gun clattering across the hardwood floor. Jimmy? Jimmy, where are you? Ray was spinning around, trying to locate the threat, while keeping his gun pointed in Tara's general direction. The second man had pulled out a flashlight and was sweeping it around the room. I threw the hunting knife, aiming for the flashlight. The blade struck the plastic housing and shattered it, sending the room back into darkness. There's someone in here with us. No shit, genius. I circled around behind them, moving silently on carpets I'd walked on for 15 years. The second man was panicking, firing blindly into the shadows. His muzzle flashes lit up the room in brief, strobing moments. I tackled him from behind, driving him to the ground. We rolled across the floor, fighting for control of his weapon. He was stronger than me, but I was fighting for my daughter's life. I got the gun away from him and clubbed him with the butt. He went limp. That left Ray. I'll eliminate her, he shouted into the darkness. I'll put a bullet in her head right now. No, you won't, I said, my voice carrying across the room. Because then you lose your only bargaining chip. Monroe? That you? Turn the lights back on. I don't think so. I like the dark. It's honest. I could hear him breathing heavily, trying to pinpoint my location. Tara was crying softly, but she was staying calm. Smart girl. You want to know what's funny, Ray? Nick Barrett hired you to scare me, but he never told you the truth about who you're dealing with. You're just some washed-up lawyer. I'm a washed-up lawyer who spent 20 years learning how to destroy people professionally. And now I'm doing it personally. I moved again, staying in motion. Ray fired toward my voice, but I was already gone. See, Ray, the thing about guys like Nick is that they never think about consequences. They just react. Nick's whole life has been falling apart, and instead of accepting responsibility, he decided to blame me. And now he's hired you to commit felony kidnapping. Another shot, this one wide by several feet. But here's what Nick didn't tell you. I've been recording everything, every threat, every meeting, every plan, and right now, there are cameras in this room capturing everything you do. That wasn't entirely true, but Ray didn't know that. You're lying. Am I? Check your phone, Ray. How many bars do you have? I heard him fumbling for his phone. No signal. What did you do? Signal jammer. Another little upgrade to the house. See, I've been planning for this moment for weeks. Every contingency, every possibility. Did you really think you could walk into my house and threaten my family without consequences? The front door exploded inward. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness as police officers flooded the room. Chicago PD! Everyone on the ground! Ray spun toward the new threat, his gun swinging away from Tara. I tackled him from the side, driving him into the wall. We went down together, but I came up with his weapon. Dad! Tara cried as I cut her restraints. It's okay, sweetheart, it's over. Detective Caro appeared at my shoulder. Julian, are you hurt? I'm fine. But you'll want to arrest these men for kidnapping, breaking and entering, and assault with a weapon. What about you? Breaking into your own house and assaulting intruders. Self-defense. They threatened my daughter. Ray was conscious but dazed. As the officers cuffed him, he looked up at me with something approaching respect. You set this whole thing up, he said. The kidnapping, the trap, everything. You wanted us to come here. I wanted Nick Barrett to make a mistake that would finally put him away for good. Kidnapping my daughter certainly qualifies. You're crazier than he is. No, Ray. I'm just better at it. As the police led the men away, I found Adriana standing in the doorway. She looked haggard, older than her years, like a woman who'd finally realized the cost of her choices. Julian, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't know. Nick said he was just going to talk to you, maybe scare you a little. I never thought. You never thought about consequences. That's always been your problem, Adriana. You act first and let other people deal with the aftermath. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Are you? Or are you just sorry you got caught up in something that finally went too far? She had no answer for that. Detective Caro approached us. We'll need statements from both of you. And Julian, we're going to need to know about those house modifications. Some of what you did tonight was creative. All perfectly legal. I was protecting my family in my own home. From kidnappers your ex-wife's boyfriend sent. Allegedly. Caro smiled grimly. Right, allegedly. As dawn broke over Winnetka, I stood in the wreckage of my former living room and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. It was over. Nick Barrett would be facing conspiracy charges for the kidnapping. His reputation was destroyed, his business was gone, and his freedom was about to disappear as well. Adriana had lost everything. Her marriage, her lover, her social standing, and now, potentially, her freedom if prosecutors decided to charge her as an accessory. And I had my children back, safe, and finally understanding the true cost of their mother's choices. Dad, Tara said, taking my hand. What happens now? I looked around at the house where we'd been a family, where Adriana had served me divorce papers in front of everyone, where Nick Barrett's desperation had finally consumed him completely. Now we go home, I said, and we start over. Ross appeared beside us, having arrived with the police. Is it really over? For Nick Barrett? Absolutely. For your mother? I looked at Adriana, who was giving her statement to another detective. That's up to her, but she's not our problem anymore. And for us? I put my arms around my children and walked toward the door. For us, this is just the beginning. Outside, Chicago was waking up to a new day. Somewhere in the city, the gossip mill was already spinning with news of the kidnapping, the arrest, the spectacular downfall of Nick Barrett, and the final chapter in Adriana Monroe's social ambitions. But I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was thinking about the future, about rebuilding my life with the people who actually mattered, about the law practice I might start, the relationships I might repair, the man I might become now that I was finally free of the people who'd tried to destroy me. Adriana had wanted to unmake Julian Monroe, the boring corporate lawyer. She'd succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. What she'd created instead was someone far more dangerous, a man with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for.